Welcome to WT History. In this series, we list all the major events that happened in the world in a year, starting from 1776 to 2024. On January 7th, the first ever United States presidential and House of Representatives elections were held under the new Constitution. The Electoral College unanimously elected George Washington as the first president on February 4th. The first federal Congress convened at Federal Hall in New York City on April 1st, achieving its first quorum. Congressman Frederick Muhlenberg was elected as the first Speaker of the House. Shortly after, on April 6th, the Senate also reached its first quorum. John Langdon of Pennsylvania became the first president pro tempore, and the electoral votes were officially counted. George Washington was confirmed as president-elect, with John Adams as vice president-elect. John Adams assumed his duties as vice president on April 21st, presiding over the Senate. 9 days later, on April 30th, George Washington was inaugurated as the first president of the United States, marking the beginning of his administration. On July 27th, the Department of Foreign Affairs, later renamed the Department of State, was formed. On August 7th, the Department of War was created, followed by the Department of the Treasury on September 2nd, with Alexander Hamilton appointed as the first Secretary of the Treasury on September 11th. September 22nd saw the creation of the U.S. Department of the Post Office. Just days later, on September 24th, the Judiciary Act of 1789 was passed, establishing the federal judiciary system and the United States Marshals Service. On September 25th, Congress proposed 12 constitutional amendments, 10 of which would later become the Bill of Rights. Thomas Jefferson was appointed the first Secretary of State on September 26th, and the U.S. Department of War formally established the first regular army on September 29th. New Jersey became the first state to ratify the Bill of Rights on November 20th, and North Carolina became the 12th U.S. state after ratifying the Constitution on November 21st. Finally, on November 26th, the nation celebrated its first Thanksgiving Day, as recommended by President Washington and approved by Congress. Significant events also took place beyond politics. On January 9th, the Treaty of Fort Harmar reaffirmed earlier agreements between the U.S. government and Native American tribes. On January 21st, the first American novel, The Power of Sympathy, was printed in Boston. Georgetown University, the first Roman Catholic college in the U.S., was founded on January 23rd in Maryland. In July 10th, Alexander Mackenzie reached the Mackenzie River Delta, and on November 6th, Pope Pius VI created the first Roman Catholic diocese in the U.S., appointing John Carroll as bishop. The University of North Carolina, the nation's oldest public university, was founded on December 11th. Also, Thomas Jefferson returned from Europe, bringing the first macaroni machine to the U.S., and a temperance movement began in Connecticut under Benjamin Rush's argument against the excessive use of alcohol. Fort Washington was built in Ohio to protect settlements in the Northwest Territory. Meanwhile, in France, history was being made. On May 5th, the Estates General convened for the first time in 175 years, marking the start of the French Revolution. On June 17th, the Third Estate declared itself the National Assembly. This was followed by the famous tennis court oath on June 20th, where representatives vowed not to disband until a constitution was established. King Louis XVI attempted to reconcile with reforms on June 23rd, but events in July escalated tensions. An estimated 150,000 out of 600,000 Parisians were unemployed, and on July 9th, the National Assembly became the National Constituent Assembly to draft a constitution. On July 11th, the king dismissed Chief Minister Jacques Necker, sparking public outrage. Camille Desmoulins's fiery speech on July 12th led to protests, and Parisians began arming themselves the next day. On July 14th, citizens stormed the fortress of Bastille, freeing 7 prisoners and symbolizing the revolution's start. Feudal privileges were abolished on August 4th, and the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen was proclaimed on August 26th. The Women's March on Versailles on October 5th saw thousands walk 12 miles from Paris demanding action over high bread prices. On October 10th, Joseph Ignace Guillotin proposed more humane capital punishment methods, including the guillotine. On November 2nd, the National Assembly nationalized church property. By December 23rd, political tensions culminated with accusations against Marquis de Favras for plotting to rescue the royal family. Across the world, events continued shaping history. On January 29th, Emperor Quang Trung of Vietnam crushed the Chinese Qing forces in the Battle of Ngoc Hoi Dong Da. On February 21st, King Gustav III of Sweden strengthened his absolute monarchy with the Union and Security Act. In March, a graphic depiction of a slave ship, the Brooks, was published in England, fueling abolitionist movements. The Second Xhosa War began in southern Africa, and in Japan, the Menashi-Kunasher Rebellion broke out on March 10th. In April, Selim III succeeded Abdul Hamid I to become the Ottoman Sultan, and on April 28th, Fletcher Christian led the mutiny on the British Royal Navy ship HMS Bounty against Captain William Bligh in the Pacific Ocean. By July 14th, Captain William Bligh and 18 other survivors reached Timor after a harrowing 4,000-mile journey in an open boat. Brazil saw its first independence attempt in June with the Inconfidencia Mineira. On July 9th, the theater war officially ended in Scandinavia. In August, the Liège Revolution began in the Prince Bishopric of Liège, and the first naval battle of the Svensk Sund occurred in the Gulf of Finland. On August 28th, William Herschel discovered Enceladus, one of Saturn's moons. The Battle of Rymnik on September 22nd saw Alexander Suvorov and his Russian forces defeating the army of 100,000 Turks, and in October, the Brabant revolutionaries crossed the border from the Dutch Republic into the Austrian Netherlands. The first public reading of the Manifesto of the People of Brabant declared the independence of the Austrian Netherlands. 3 days later, at the Battle of Turnhout, the Austrian army was beaten by the Brabant revolutionaries. Meanwhile, the Qajar dynasty established its rule in Iran. Antoine Lavoisier's groundbreaking Traité élémentaire de chimie was published, and Martin Heinrich Klaproth discovered uranium. The Bengal presidency established a penal colony in the Andaman Islands, and Olaudah Equiano's autobiography was published in London, becoming a landmark in Black literature. Finally, innovations like the pedal-powered tricycle and the construction of the world's oldest surviving private yacht, Peggy of Castletown, marked advances in technology and culture. Which event fascinated you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more historical deep dives.